Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Board Explorer's Basic Editing for Beginners. And this is going to be very basic. I'm not in my main studio. If you've ever seen any of my live stuff before, or the Vobe show, which is my sister station, that sounds very grand, doesn't it? Then you will know that I have a home studio and I do this sort of light entertainment comedy show. This is a workshop, and I'm actually in my front room, which doubles as my office, and over there, you can't quite see it, is my main editing machine and table, and where I do most of my edits. And this is my desk where I do most of my internet stuff. But it has a computer that I used to do all my video editing on, so it's a reasonably powerful computer, and so hopefully it will work. I apologize first of all for the quality of the audio and the picture. I'm just using a simple Logitech webcam to do this because I'm going to cut to my Windows computer desktop screen, or the editing software that I use, and demonstrate bits and pieces. But a lot of this, let me just say, is going to be a sort of a talk, theorizing, I suppose. I'll talk about my approach to editing and all of that and stuff. But first I want to make sure that you can hear me, that there's people out there and all those things. So forgive me if you see the top of my head. I've had to put the webcam on the top of my monitor, so you may see me looking down a few times. So let me just double check that we've got anybody out there. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, there we go. We've got lots of comments, which is great. Thank you very much. Now I won't be able to respond to all the comments as I do in the Vobe show, people who know that, because that is very much a comments, but I will take questions. But what I'll do is I will ask for the question. I'll say here is a time to ask your questions. So rather than ask a question and hope that I will see it, it's best to wait for me to give you that time to say, hey, have a question. I deliberately came on a little early. I know people might say, hey, wait a minute, you're a bit early. And that's because I wanted to make sure everything is working. So we've got the lovely Julia out there, and Mr. Humphreys even, which is marvellous. So first of all, I just want to know if you can hear me. Gary Ion, is it? I can hear you in Uganda. I'll try not to shout. That's marvellous. Hello, lovely Richard. Hello, Vobis, Mike Dixon. Wonderful. So this is that's great. I will come back and double check that, but on this setup, I've only got the one screen. And so I can't have all the windows that one would need to be able to monitor everything all at once. It's going to be a bit of a problem. I've made myself a cup of tea. I don't know if you can see this because I can't see the feedback at the moment. But from my Bald Explorer mug, which are available, by the way. If you go to baldexplorer.com, you should see that you can buy a mug if you so wish. I don't actually make, they're quite dear, I think. I don't actually make very much money from them, but they are nice to have. So there we go. Clint Brook, can't stop, just thought I'd say hi. Not to worry, Clint, thanks for popping by. Right, okay. So this is an editing session, Gran, I might learn something new. It says come walk with me. So this is really going to be aimed at beginners. And just to clarify, I haven't been on a course. I've been editing myself from the days of Super 8, Standard 8 and 16mm film. I've used all of those. I've edited on the old little viewers that we used to have in the old days, where you put a roll of 50-foot film on one end and an empty roll there, and you put it through, and it was all silent, and you would do it all by hand. And I have edited on a Steenbeck, which is a flat bed. It's like a desk that's flat, like an ordinary desk, and you have the film on however many, the spools of film, say 400 feet, and so they would be lying down like on a turntable instead of how you might imagine a film editing would be with the films that way, like on the Super 8 viewers, they would lie flat, and you would have on the Steenbeck. I don't know if you've ever seen documentaries of people where they've been in the editing rooms in feature films going back to, I don't know, the 60s, 70s, and even 80s. Often they're sitting by one of these Steenbecks. Classically, they have a light blue surface, and then they have these sort of what looks like turntables, and the film gets laced through, and then they have a monitor in front of them, and they have some, I can't remember how much actually. Let me just change to that one. There we are. I can see now roughly. They have controls here and here to play it. The sound is separate, and it's on what they called magnetic film. Now, it's not actually celluloid. It's the same stuff that they used to have in reel-to-reel tape recorders, which is what is it? Ferrous something or other. The iron, the chemical that's on the back of recording tape, ordinary recording tape, and that would be in the shape of film. So it was sprocketed, and it would run at the same speed, which depending on how you were filming, usually about 24 frames a second, it would run at the same speed so that you could sync it up sprocket by sprocket. Another device that I have edited on and owned, I actually owned a Steenbeck. I think it cost about £600 in '92 when I bought it. I had something called a pick sync, and a pick sync is exactly what it says. It's a picture synchronizer. So again, you would put your picture track, which would be your color, what we would call the work print, on one of these gangs, and it might have, say, 6 gangs, which would be 6 heads, and then 5 audio heads. So you would have this magnetic tape, which looks like film with sprockets in, and again you would wind it by hand, and you'd have one track was the film with a little monitor so you could see it, and 5 tracks, we would now call them layers, of audio. And so one of those audio might be what you recorded when you were out filming. Another layer or track might be the music. Another track might be purely for voiceover or narration. Another track might be spot sound effects. And another one might be Foley and things like that. So you would have all these layers. Now the reason I mention all of this is when you start getting into editing on a digital platform with things like, I'm using a high-end thing called DaVinci Resolve, but of course Adobe do their Premiere, whatever it's called these days. It came out as Premiere Pro at one time, but I can't remember what it's called. But there are loads of these things out there. Avid was one of the first digital platforms to do it, which was very, very expensive, and is still very high end. And there's loads of others, of course. But when you use that, you are effectively using exactly the same principles as you would have done with feature film or cine film, I should say. And that's very encouraging because it's a very easy and simple way to put together a whole load of stuff that you may have shot or have been given or you've collected from elsewhere, and then amalgamate it into one. And so that technique is pretty much fundamental. What muddied the water, and I won't talk about this for very long, was when you got onto the early video, which was on tape, and you had to basically, you were dubbing one from one machine that played it, your original shots onto another machine that recorded it, because this was this new thing, video, that was a magnetic signal, and it had to be recorded from one to the other, and every time you did that you had a generation loss. And then you would have things like 3 machine edit or 4 machine edit, and you'd have to put what you called your layers or your gang of your different things on different machines, and you would have to program all of these individual machines so that they would all play at simultaneous times, so that everything would get bounced down onto one track. It's very similar to how the music industry, I don't think they still do that now, but again, they had these big 2-inch tapes, and each one had something like 16 tracks. Anyway, let's worry about that too much. I just wanted to let you know that I'm not an expert in video editing, but I've been doing it pretty much all my life, and I enjoy it. And for me, the editing is what is the creative part of it. You can get through everything else, but it is the edit that puts the magic together. And so you need to have good vision, not vision as in how I've only got one eye, but you need to have creative vision of how the thing is going to look. The other thing I can say about editing is it's like music, not like pop music, which is quite 6 beats to the second or whatever it is, and then you have middle 8, chorus, verse, middle 8, chorus, verse, a bit repetitive. I would say that a video, when you put it together, is a bit more like classical music. There are movements in that music. There is rhythm in that production. There are points that are fast. There are points that are slow. There are points when it comes to an absolute halt. There are quiet bits. There are loud bits. And the whole art of putting together whatever it is, even if it's just, as I do very often, just a simple walk, is trying to keep that interest going by having fast bits, slow bits, and what have you. Instead of being, as you often see, people being very monotone all the way through. Not necessarily how they speak, but their rhythm is just, I don't know, like almost like a metronome. It just goes at one pace. And variety is the spice of life, as we all know. So anyway, now I've not done one of these workshops before, so this is all incredibly new to me, and I hope that this is going to make some sense. Let me just check that you are receiving me loud and clear, and that people are saying things. Andrew Norris remembers the days of sticky tape for Super 8. Yes, I used to use the acetone, the cement, and you'd splice it and you'd glue it together, and the film would go through the gate on the projector. And sometimes if your skills weren't too good at gluing these shots together, they would get stuck or break, and it was a nightmare. But all of that hands-on stuff was fantastic training. It was really good. Jason Reeve, good to see you out there. He says, never used Resolve. I shall look into it using Adobe After Effects for this particular piece, but Premiere is just as slow. Yes, I do remember, when I first got into editing, the resources that the computer was using to try and do what it does. It is remarkable. And I know computers are incredibly fast. And I was having a conversation with my friend Mr. Suggett, who was showing me how people edit their videos on their phone, on their mobile phone. And now you see, to me, that's like magic, because I'm brought up with computers that were always too slow to process everything, and you had to render off, if you did a dissolve where you had one shot and you wanted it to be superimposed over say 24 frames, 2 seconds into the next thing, it would have to stop and render that little piece, and then it would play it again. And so I always think that computers are never fast enough. And then people are editing HD footage on their phone, and so that blows me away. So yeah, just to reiterate, for people who've joined, and I've just spotted somebody has said, I'll say when I will take questions, because I'm going to be chatting and demonstrating, and I can't see the chats. and I've only got one monitor, so there's a number of windows that are all on, but you know how windows work, they're all behind each other, and I need the big window to show everything. So I can flip between the windows, but it would take forever if I'm continually having to do that. So I will just say, yes, ask your questions now, and then we'll have 5 minutes to ask the questions and that sort of thing. So, having got all that preamble out of the way, let me go back to, hang on. This is quite mad doing it this way, but quite fun. It is quite fun. Let me have another slurp of tea. And again, I apologise for the quality of the webcam picture and the low light. But we'll see how we go. And if you like this and you would like me to do more, please let me know. Let me know at the end, probably, because I probably won't go and read all the comments now, because it takes forever to read all the live comments. Although, hopefully, the lovely Julia is monitoring, and so she'll sort of get a gauge of how it's going. She doesn't know that. I've just told her that's going to be her job, but she may have to go off and feed Joseph or cook hubby dinner or whatever, So, sorry, I just got a bit of chicken stuck in I had chicken soup for my dinner, and a lump of chicken is stuck in my tooth. Right, so this is going to be, sort of, as I say, for beginners. So let's just first of all get some basic principles down. What's the point of editing? What is the actual point of it? Because you can go out with your phone or your GoPro or your DSLR camera or your Handycam or whatever equipment you have, and you can turn it on and you can go and visit somewhere. I do a lot of visits to heritage landscape and nature places. So you could do that. You could just switch it on. You could walk about. You could film over here and you can film over there and you can film there and you can get reaction of somebody funny, and you could zoom in on on a tower, and then you can pull out and you can zoom in on another tower, and there's a funny little duck waddling over there. You could go and film that, and you could spend hours doing all of that, couldn't you? And it's, you've got a perfectly good film, because cameras are so clever these days. It pretty much focuses itself. It pretty much sorts out the lighting. You don't have to worry about that too much. Some of the more modern cameras don't even wobble anymore. They've got stabilization in. You probably don't need a tripod. You can hold it still enough, and it's not too, you don't get shaky vision. It is amazing. So why would you actually need to edit it at all? Because it's going to be perfect, isn't it? And the world and their brother are going to want to watch it, aren't they? Aren't they? Aren't they? Maybe not. Maybe not. And the reason, of course, and I know you probably know all this, but the reason is that people don't want to sit through hours of something which isn't saying very much or is taking a hell of a long time to get to the point. Because we live in this modern world and we're used to watching television, or forms of television, which might be Netflix and Amazon Prime and YouTube and places like that, we're used to programs or videos being presented in such a way as they get to the point really quickly. And when you've got to wait for things, we get very bored. We get very bored. And in fact, the beauty of things like YouTube is, apart from lives, of course, if you're watching live, but if you're watching a pre-recorded thing, you can scrub. You can get rid of all the bits that weren't interesting and get to the bits that are interesting. So as a filmmaker or a videographer or a vlogger or whatever you want to call yourself, or somebody who just squirts a bit of video, what you want to try and do is get rid of all those boring bits that people will find boring. Of course, you find them absolutely fascinating, and you could sit there and watch that 2 hours of you in the rowing boat, rowing across the river. You could watch that for hours because every frame was just wonderful. And that's you, and of course you can do that. But when you show it to somebody else, people get a bit, I nearly said fiddly. They get they start to, what's the word I'm looking for? They get, fidgety. They get a bit bored. They might nod off. They might actually not bother to get through to the end of the video. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to condense what you've shot into something that is a lot more fluid and is more watchable and gets to the point as quickly as it needs to. And that is an art in itself, and I'm not saying that I'm good at that or anything like that. Some people edit very fast and have very short shots that go click, 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 and other people have longer shots or have shots that develop from one thing to another. But generally, these two sort of schools will have a purpose for those shots, and both are completely valid and both work incredibly well. The key to remember with editing is your storytelling. Everything comes back to storytelling. You're telling a story. Now, let's just define what we mean by story. What we're not saying is it has to be fictional. It's not a drama or a romance or a horror or anything like that. It's whatever you do is a story. There's a beginning, middle and end. Whether, like me, I'm just filming a walk, I'm going from A to B, so the beginning might be simply my introduction. Hello, I'm Richard Vose, the Bald Explorer. I'm going on a walk. I'm going to be climbing up this mountain and it's going to be arduous and I never know if I'm going to get there, but we're going to give it a whirl. Then there's the actual walking and the things that happen, if they do, or the things I spot and the things I want to point out, which is the middle. And then there's the end when you arrive and you go, phew, I've arrived. Or you haven't arrived. Oh, I've lost the bloody path. I don't know where it is. So, and so that's the end where you round it up and you say, in my case, thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow, like and subscribe. All of that nonsense, that's in the end. And people accept this basic beginning, middle and end concept, and they get very used to it. They get used to the setup, they get used to the middle where the things happen, and then they get used to the wind down. These are all signals that people are used to. We see it in television all the time. We see it in adverts. They'll tell a story in 30 seconds. On YouTube, they might be telling them in 10 seconds. So, and they've got to grab your attention, they've got to do the business and get to the end, and that's your story. So you're telling a story, and it's very important that you remember that, but the story can be extremely simple. It doesn't have to have lots of subplots and lots of characters and things to happen all the time. The story just can be very, very simple. As long as there's got some sort of beginning, middle and end, you're not going to go wrong. Of course, there are rules that you can follow, and there are things that break the rules and all of this, and you can tease the audience at the beginning by putting in some, if you're walking on a bridge and you fall in the water, and that's an event halfway through your walk, shall we say, you might want to put that like they do on the news or on a lot of American documentaries and things like that, or a little sting, a teaser at the very beginning where you kind of see this person fall off the log, fall into the river, and you think, oh my God, what was that? And then suddenly you might have the titles, and then you might come into the setup, and the beginning really starts there, where it's, hello, I'm doing this and blah blah blah. And then in the story, you get somewhere in there, you get to that point that you've actually already seen part of, the splash falling in, but it's teased you to wait for it. What caused it? So there's lots of things that you can do, but the main thing is that you want to satisfy the audience's expectations, because the audience does expect to have this beginning, middle and end, and if they're not satisfied, if it just ends and you haven't sort of brought them to an end, whether that be a deliberate on purpose end in the way that Monty Python might have done, or that you come to a conclusion, people get a bit put out. So the whole process of editing then is to take the material, put it together in some sort of order, whether you're assembling and rearranging, and all that footage tells this story, and there you go. Now, I have seen people do exactly this. There's a friend of mine who I don't know if he's watching as we speak. I don't want to mention his name because I'll upset him as such, but he'll know who he is, and he's not going to take this badly, I know. And he's a newbie, and he went out the other day and he did some reporting on the recent storm that we've had in his area and looking at the flooding. And he's actually got a new camera, so he's not 100% au fait on how it works, and he's new to editing. So I'm not I'm criticising, but in a positive way, if you see what I mean. I think there's semantics between critique and criticising. And I had lunch round at lovely Julia's place today, and we were just talking about. She's saying, "Well, how are you going to go about doing this? Are you really going to criticise people's work?" And I said, "Well, I will." I said, "I know there's critique, and then there's criticise, and without spending too much time on this, I said I want to criticise and say what's wrong with bits, because they're the bits that we would look at improving. So it would be a positive criticism as opposed to a critique, which might, look at the overall thing and say, well, this is really good about it and this was a bit not so good. And I'm not so much worried about what was good. I'm more worried about the bits that are bad, because if we can make the bad bits good, then the rest of it's okay. And it is okay to be okay. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Anyway, this chap went out and did all this. But what he assembled his video very nicely. He went from this place to that place to this place to that place and showed us what the flooding was like. But he did this. Each location he went to starts off like this. Oops, no, not like that. That's me knocking the camera down. Hang on. I didn't mean to touch the camera. So, adjust it again. He starts like this. Well, I'm now at such and such a place, and I'm looking at so and so, and this has happened, and this has happened, and this, that, and the other, and I'm now going to go to the next one. And at the beginning and end of each of these shots, you could see where he'd turned the camera on, and so he was either coming back from having switched it on at the beginning of the shot, and at the end of the shot was going forward to turn it off. And of course that's very clunky to watch. And so when you've got your footage, you want to be trimming the footage to what's the bit in each shot that is going to be useful, and what bits can I get rid of. And the bits where you're turning on and turning off the camera, and you do see it, and it's amazing how you see it. And the thing is, you think nobody would put that out. Surely it's like the first thing you would stop doing, but people just don't think about it. So that's why I'm saying this is very much for beginners. So people, you see them going to switch the camera off, and it clicks, and then it clicks to the next one. And when you go from one scene to another scene, you often would use some form of transition. Now the transition may be just a cut. It may just cut from one scene to another. You'd have several shots within a scene. But when you're coming to a new scene, you want something to tell the people that you are somewhere else, or time has moved on. So there's so many different aspects to this. And I don't want to sort of bore you too quickly with everything. So I'm going to pause for a moment before we let me just demonstrate what I'm going to be doing in a minute. Is I'm going to get my timeline up on the DaVinci Resolve which I use, and just demonstrate and just sort of point out some things about how it works. I'm not so much worried about the software, not worried about that at all. And I'm not going to go into, how you move this to there and what you do. I just want to point out some basic things. If you're working on a PC, I have seen people do their stuff on phones. Mr. Suggett came and demonstrated the sort of, it looked like, not Rubik's Cube, it looked like a game of Tetris where you move shots around and bring them down onto a timeline, which is effectively the right principle, but I need to see the stuff. So I'm going to do that in a minute, show you all that in a minute. Let me just get rid of that and come back to this. But first I'm going to just pause to take any questions that you have, and just gauge if I'm giving you stuff that's useful, or whether I'm talking too simplistically, or whether I'm still going over your head. So if you've got some questions or comments that you want to mention about what we've been doing so far for the first half an hour, then please do, because I will look at the comments now and see how you're doing, and that will be good. So first of all, am I doing, what have we got here? I've noticed a few things a bit like that when I watch my videos. I'm busy parenting tonight, just listening and keeping tabs, says Julia. So yeah, I'm just having a bit of a pause whilst I get my thoughts together. And also, actually, whilst I do that, I just need to open my door. I've got my wood-burning stove on just down there, just out of shot. And if I don't have the door to this room open, it gets incredibly warm, and I can feel my cheeks glowing. So I'll just be back in a second. And it's quite useful to have a bit of heat. Heat into the house. Right, so let's have a look and see if there's any questions. So, how long did you learn your editing skills? I didn't, as I say at the beginning, I didn't go on a course, and I started with Super 8. I went to a club, a cine club, used to watch what people did there and would talk to people and have a go, and people would give you bits of advice. But mostly, I haven't really read books on it. Mostly I've watched professional stuff, feature films, and I often watch and I'm just looking at how the edits work, how the one shot goes to another shot, what they do, because and you just slowly over time become aware of this. I think if you really, really love something, you don't even know you're learning. Just to be clear, I haven't edited on a phone in years, says Richard. No, that's very true. The palm of the hand over the lens is currently fashionable for transitions and endings, says Peter Vines. Oh, what, this sort of... Yeah, you see, I think YouTube has lots of, crazy, great ideas like that, that work, I think, for YouTube and for a certain generation and a certain type of people. And of course, everybody can do these things exactly how you want to do them. I tend to err away from trendy things, whizzy graphics and trendy transitions for the sake of it, because I think a transition where you're going from a scene to another scene has to, it's all about taking you on this journey. You're telling a story, and sometimes I think that some of these things are just in it for effect, and it may be then that the content of the video is not strong enough to hold the attention that it needs all these extras. So I personally prefer not to do that, but I have no problem with other people doing. Obviously they can do whatever they damn well like. I find computer editing far too complicated and unnecessary, says George's Railway Videos. Well, it's up to you, isn't it? It's only necessary if you say, when you make something easy on the eye to watch, people are more likely to watch it. If it's clunky, then they're likely to get bored. It's like having a nice sandwich. if the sandwich is tasty and everything is in proportion, it's nice. But if you've got a sandwich that you're eating it and it's got bits that have got too much salt in it, or it just, when you bite, it squirts everywhere, it becomes difficult to eat the sandwich. And making a video is a bit like that. You want it to be enjoyable from beginning to end. And so although you say it's unnecessary, it might be unnecessary for you, but for the viewer, they might find that it's helpful. How long? Keep going. All useful and good food for thought. Thank you very much, Kim. Henry says, what's the best editing program to use for a beginner? I don't know. The answer to that is that I'll leave that to somebody else, because it's so long ago that I've been doing it. You know, there's loads of YouTube channels out there that will offer you that sort of thing, I would imagine, and how to, you know, how to move this to there and this effect and that effect. There's so many of those, and I'm not really interested in that part of it. My pet hate is fire hosing, swinging the camera backward and forth over a scene. I want to get to that one. That's very true. And Mickey Stevens says, do you have it all worked out in your head before you start filming? Okay, let's just pause there for a minute, because these are two extremely interesting parts. I'll come back to Mickey's in a moment. Peter's absolutely right. In the edit, you have the chance to improve what you've shot. And people have a tendency, a lot of people, when they begin, I'm just looking for my, here we go. Got my GoPro here. This is my 7. People have a tendency, imagine it's on a stick or whatever, of to film, and they're somewhere and they're filming like this, and then they're filming over here, and then it's down here, and then they're coming back over here, and then they're looking up over there, and basically it's just snaking all over the place. And you get these shots, and it can be beautifully still and stable and all in focus, and the sound is perfect and the lighting is wonderful. But it's just naff. There's no other way. It's just naff. If you're going to do a pan, people say, oh, these days you shouldn't pan. I think that's rubbish. I think you can pan. Do all these things in moderation. You only pan when you need to pan. Sometimes you need to pan. You might be following somebody, you know, and you're going to pan with them. You're following somebody. But if you're following a vista, shall we say, and you're panning over here like this, do your pan, have your start, let us see the start, give us a moment to take it in. Oh yeah, that's that. Then you slowly start, you ease into your pan, and you film around like this, and you get to an end point that you've already worked out. I'm going to end here because it's composition. It's nice composition to end on, and then it will cut to something else. Don't, and you see amateurs do this all the time. Please don't go, I'm coming over here and I'm telling you about this wonderful vista I can see, and I've got to here, and actually if you look down, don't go back, don't come back, please. You start here or there, wherever you're starting, or up there and going down there, or whichever way you're going, however you're doing this pan, start somewhere and finish somewhere, and do not go back. I see it all the time. It's, oh, we're coming over here and this is nice, and now I'm snaking over here and I'm coming. No, stop. Go there, do that. Cut. Start here, then go there. Stop. Cut. Go here, go, show all these things on individual shots, not one long snaky old shot, because it's just crap. It's just so naff. And you're right, Peter. See all that all the time. Mikey says, sorry, I called you Mickey earlier. Mikey says, do I have it all prepared? Well, yes and no. I work pretty much on the fly. I don't always know what the end is going to be, but I know that I'm going to set it up. I'm going to go on my journey to wherever it is, and there will be some form of ending. And as I'm going on the journey, I'm also aware that I'm making these videos that I make to a roughly 10 minutes, something like that. I'm aware of everything I've shot, and I know all the shots that I've taken, and I'm already editing it in my head. And then I know that I've got to come to a point which will be a nice finish, so that even though it's a very simplistic story, it will come to an end. And this is, so I'm also aware of each individual shot that I have shot, but shots that I need to shoot. So for example, I may be filming myself standing on the top of a hill, and I may look down the hill and see, say, a train, a nice choo-choo train, puffing out steam and all the rest of it beyond. The camera's facing me, and I'm looking at the train saying, oh my goodness, that's a George Stephenson train, Mark 704, with a what's-her-name plate and a this, that and the other. But the camera's still looking at me, and I'm saying all this. Now, I know that the audience will want to see the train. They will want to see what I see. Because as soon as you look at something, we're an inquisitive lot. We will automatically want to see what it is that the other that you're looking at. So if I look at and say that's a lovely tree, you've got to show the tree. You've got to cut to the tree. And people make this mistake again, another mistake people make all the time. So this is when you're out filming, but you will thank yourself when you come to edit, because you'll see yourself talking to the camera going, oh, that's a lovely train, or that's a tree over there, or whatever, blah blah blah, or look at that pub, isn't it oldie woldy, and what have you. And you'll be sitting there at the edit going, I don't see the pub, I don't see the train, I don't see the tree, I didn't film it. And if that's the case, I would cut it. I wouldn't even have that scene in it if I didn't have the thing I'm looking at, because the audience they will go, well, let me see it. Where is it? Let me see it. They will be shouting, if not out loud, but mentally inside, they will be shouting, let me see it. I want to see the train. Where's the sodding train? And then you move away, and it's like, and they'll feel cheated if you don't show them the things you're looking at. So I always am aware. So and you have we'll come onto this on another workshop, but you'll have a whole list of things in your head when I'm out filming of what I've got to get in order to make it cut together, not professionally or anything, but just so it works, so that people can not worry about it, or they're not screaming at the telly or their phone or however they watch going, where's the bloody train? So although I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know what I'm going to shoot or how I'm going to shoot it, I work on the fly, and I'm improvising a lot, which is I love it. It's difficult when I'm working with somebody else and they'll say something, be talking and say, well, what do you think of being up here on the South Downs then? They say, oh, it's marvellous, it's marvellous. Look at that fox over there. And I shall think, shite. He's looking at a fox, and I have this torture moment going on in my head, and I'm thinking, what do? Do I turn the camera and try and film the fox? Do I carry on filming him so I have the shots of him talking about the fox? I could turn and miss the fox altogether, or I could carry on filming him and not see the fox, or I could whip the camera around and maybe catch the fox, but depending on how I'm taking the sound, if the sound is on the camera, for example, and I whip the camera over there, I'm going to lose what he's saying about the fox or whatever it is. And this happens all the time. People will mention something and I'm thinking to myself, oh, crikey, you bastards. in my head. I go, you bastard, you're pointing at something. I must remember to film it. If it's an inanimate object, that's great. You know, look at that oak tree. I think, right, okay, I've got to film the oak tree. I must film the oak tree. Because in the edit, as I said before, you'll want to cut to the oak tree. So when he says, oh, look at that lovely oak tree, cut to the oak tree. You just cut to it, you hold it there for what deems the right amount of time and cut back to whatever else it is. But you've got to see the bloody oak tree. If in the case with the fox and he says, oh, look at that fox, and I think I'm not going to turn the camera around because there's a chance I can't see the fox and it will just ruin this scene, I'll carry on filming him. Knowing that the chances are I can't see the fox, I've got two possible things to do. One is I cut that little sequence completely out, because if I turn around and I can't see the fox, it's just going to be a bit that I will just go, well, there's no point using that. There's absolutely no point, because the audience will be going, where's the sodding fox? The other option I've got is I can film the fox. I could make the camera perhaps a bit like this. Like where is a bit of a searching thing, so the footage comes back as if it's my point of view looking, and then I could say I can't see it, must have run into the bushes. So that way I could edit that bit in afterwards, but in the moment of filming I would be thinking this all ahead, you know. So you're filming, and he's just said, oh, look at that fox. I'm thinking, you bastard, now what do? Am I going to see the fox? If he said, oh, there's a fox sitting there, it's not moving, it's just looking at us, I could obviously take that chance to go and do it. But if he says, look at that fox, right, or that squirrel, you know, oh, look at that lovely squirrel running up the tree, I'm thinking, I could think, have I got any other footage of a squirrel running up a tree? Maybe I can find a squirrel running up a tree later and edit it in, you know, because editing is all about cheating at the end of the day. You'll be surprised how many times you cheat in order to make it look right. It's not that you're trying to deceive anybody, you're just trying to make it so that, you know, look at that squirrel run up a tree, cut to a squirrel running up the tree, cut back to him, and go, oh, it's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, it is lovely. You know, it's like harmless, it doesn't mean anything. But in our fox scenario, I've got a bit waylaid on this, but in our fox scenario, I would be thinking, oh, he's mentioned the fox. I'm not going to shoot the fox because it's run into a bush. So I'll let him finish whatever he's saying about, oh, that was a so-and-so type of fox, and I love the bushy tail, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, all right. Oh, that's marvellous. Then I would probably say, I'm just going to stop you there because I need to get this shot, and I would do the wibbly-wobbly shot, and then I would do a shot of me going, oh, it's funny, I can't see it. Oh, it must have run into the bushes. Oh, well, never mind. What else were you saying? And so on. So you're just trying to get out of jail all the time. Very good questions. I'm sure there are loads. Let's just quickly go through because we're gonna run out of time. You have it all worked out in your head. My pet's fire hosing, done that. Yeah, I thought D for bricks was blocked. He's blocked on He's blocked. Is D for bricks causing a nuisance? Hang on. I thought that was the case. Okay, I'm afraid I've had to boot D for bricks. I'm sorry about that. He's a nice enough lad, but I think he's got some little disorder or something, and he doesn't mean to do it, but he is unfortunately a nuisance. So sorry I didn't get to the thing earlier. I heard the phone go. Richard, the best video editor is the one that is available. Truthfully, most folks new to video editing just need to start editing. They'll figure it out when they... Yes, that's true. I mean, you just got to keep trying it. That's very much... Mickey says it's like a jigsaw puzzle. That's right. To Fox or not to Fox? Yeah. I can't think of anyone that mentions something to you when you're videoing in one direction. Hang on, Richard. This is Kevin says... I can't think of anyone that mentions something to you when you're... Oh, yes, you can, Kevin. Yes, you can. It doesn't matter. as it doesn't. I mean, Kevin's referring to himself, and everybody does it. They don't know they're doing it. What's worse is when you work. Not what's worse, but what is annoying is you're working with somebody, and they're turning their back on you, and talking about something. And so not only can you not hear them, but you're seeing the back of their head. And how many setups do I do where we're standing in front of the camera's where you are, I'm standing here, and perhaps the castle or the thing of interest I put behind because the viewer can see it. And then I'll ask my person I'm with and I'll say, so tell me about the history of the castle. And of course what they promptly do is go, well, the castle is, as you can see, is such and such. And I'm just doing my nut. And then I have to say, okay, hang on, I'm just going to stop there. Is there any chance that when we do it, we've got the castle there, the camera can see the castle, so the viewer can see the castle, but we're going to talk about the castle and we're going to talk in that direction. We don't actually have to look at the camera all the time, but we're just going to talk in this direction. And, you know, but they will still, you know, if they're not film people, they will still go, oh yeah, yeah, no, yeah. So on the tower there, as you can see, and they're already doing it. Because what they don't understand is they might want to say, on the tower there is a window, and I've gone, right, get the picture of the window, cut to the window, which I will edit in when he refers to it, so that your two talking heads would be looking this way and talking to each other, and they might mention, oh yes, on the thing there's this window. I will cut to the window. He doesn't need to turn around and point it to me because I will cut to it in the edit. Here's a question. How much can you fix bad audio with editing? Well, let me tell you a truism that seems to be a secret. It isn't a secret, but let me tell you this truism. That you can have crap pictures and good audio and you've got a good video. But you can have crap audio and amazing pictures and you've got a crap video. Here is the secret. Make sure you spend more time capturing good audio than you do pictures. It doesn't matter if it goes out of focus a bit, or that it's a bit shaky, or that your framing is a bit rubbish. If you have rubbish audio, if you use a microphone on the camera and it's windy and it's or you're standing over here and so you sound very tinny, it's just going to look bad. I used to do a lot of testimonials for radio stations so that they could get more clients, and they would show these testimonials of one client who advertised on the radio station to prospective clients, and I would film them in their workplace, and they would say, you know, we would ask them questions and things like, what's the advantage of advertising on the radio? And they would say things like, oh, well, the best thing about advertising on the radio is the drip drip feed. You know, people listen to the radio and the message goes in their ears and blah blah blah. Anyway, they would say all their stuff, and I've always got a lapel microphone on them, which is I use a radio mic for this, and I would be wherever I would be with the camera, not necessarily close to them. Sometimes if they were a bit nervous of the camera and felt it was too close, I would have the camera much further away but zoomed in, so they didn't feel that I was on top of them, and so they could talk to the interviewer more relaxed. But I've got the sound here, so it didn't sound very tinny. And every now and again we would do this, and the client would say, oh, one of our chaps has got a DSLR camera and he's filmed a client for us. And I said, oh, that's great. And the pictures would be amazing. Lovely, crisp images, beautifully lit and what have you. But they would use the sodding microphone on the camera, and it would just sound like this. So I would have a whole series of clients saying, well, the great thing about being on the radio is this, that and the other, or this, that and the other. And then I was expected to edit in a shot that was like this, close and nicely framed, but the audio would sound like this. Well, the best thing about being on the radio is that you know you can always hear it so very well. It would sound distant and tinny, and there was absolutely bugger all you could do it, because if you were to bring up the levels, you brought up the noise of the room, the ambience of everything else, and it was painful. And and I just would say to clients, I cannot accept material that I haven't shot myself. And they would think that you're a bit snooty, aren't you? But you need to be in control. Right, we're running out of time here. There's lots of audio is tricky. It is tricky, right? The rain. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly move on because I don't want to take all your evening on what we're doing. So, hang on, I've got to work out how to do this again. I just want to run through a little bit of how I work, just to give you a vague idea. Now, we can do another one of these, and I'll do this more in detail because we're running out of time. We'll have another question session in a second. So I'm just going to put myself up there and get onto my timeline. I've got to just hang on a minute, work out how to do this. Now, in theory, let me just check. In theory, what can you see? There's so many different screens. Right, okay, so you can see my timeline there, but that's it, I've got my timeline. This is a video I did with Dave Ford when we did a whole trip in Dorset, and this was at where's the name? I can't remember the name of this place. Twyford, wasn't it? Twyford? Oh, not Twyford. Oh, what's the name of the sodding place? Oh, Tyneham. The file is called Tyneham. I've got it written up here. I can't remember if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse? Let me just get. I've never done this with where you show the what's the name? Oh yeah, you can. No, wait a minute. Can you? I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. There's probably a way to turn that on. Anyway, I know you can see the edit program. So there's loads of videos out there that explains how an edit program works and what's what. I don't want to spend time sort of teaching you to suck eggs, and you can sit and watch these other videos that tell you how all this stuff works. So I'm more interested in the theory. So I'm not really going to talk about in this video much about workflow, and that's how you. To me, workflow is the dull, boring side. But it's a necessary side. But it's how you label stuff and where things go and which order you do things, and whether you should concentrate on just doing an assemble edit to begin with, and then come back and tweak it, where you trim the pictures and all that. I'm not going to get involved in any of that. I'm going to drink a bit more of my tea. So let's just have a look. This down here that's moving, this is the timeline. And you can see that there's lots of different layers here. Let's just expand some of this and come back to the beginning. So I'm just going to quickly explain on my timeline what I have. At the top, I really want to know if you can see my mouse. Can you actually see my mouse? I don't think you can see my mouse, which is very irritating. I wonder how I can get you to do that. Let's just see. Cursor. True word, seldom spoken. Yes, we can. Kevin also says, yes, we can see it. We can see the mouse. Oh, good. Okay, thanks for that. Because when I look at the stream, I can't see the mouse, perhaps because I've only got one mouse. Right, where's my result? Okay. So here at the top, this is... have I switched that off? Oh no, the cursor's not on it. This is just a layer. So these are all layers. These are all layers. And you remember I was explaining about the pick sync and the Steinbeck in film terms, and you'd have all these different layers, and each one does a different thing. So layers or tracks, I suppose we call them tracks, don't you? It's layers in Photoshop. Tracks, perhaps we call them tracks. Yeah, it's funny how when you're trying to do all this, you lose all the terms. But anyway, the top track. It's so hang on. This is the play. This is the playhead. which shows you where you are in your edit, and then each of these are tracks, and some tracks you can see through to the next track, and some, if you put another bit of footage, you can't. So if I've got any footage in here, actually just put a photo in. So here's a photo. So this is my preview window. This is the final edit window. This will preview a photograph. If I put a photograph, hang on. If I put a photograph, why won't that go? No photograph will go. Am I locked? I haven't locked this track. Just hang on a minute. Can't put a photograph on there. That's very odd. What if I take another bit of footage? Here's a bit of footage. I didn't look at that. I wonder why that is. There's just a moment of silence there because I'm just I'm not. That's in the edit mode. I ought to be able to just grab something, but it's not letting me do that. Oh well, not to worry. Don't worry too much about that. That's just there's something switched off that I can't immediately see. But anyway, that's nothing is locked. Okay, so this is the Bald Explorer. That's just that. That's just a graphic. This one here is another graphic, which is my logo, which actually, hello, has it just zooms in, so it just grows in the frame. And it's overlaid over my main track here, which you can see has picture here and audio here. Although in this case, the audio is actually here on this track, the bottom track. Because what I do tend to do is when I have finished editing all of this, I take the audio track and I normalize it. So that means I bring all the levels up and I compress it a bit so that like I was saying before, that the audio is the most important thing, so that the audio sounds really good. I then render that off as a separate file and I bring it in on its own track here. So I can demonstrate that this is muted here. So if I unmute it and unmute and mute the newer version, you'll hear here by Dave Ford. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody.
This is the last of our videos, our recent mini-series of videos. So that is that's the original soundtrack that was recorded on that microphone as recorded. Nothing done to it.
Dave. Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody.
But if I now play the slightly improved.
Richard, hello, everybody.
This is the last. Dave.
Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody.
This is the last.
Hello, everybody.
This is the last of our videos. It's just, it's a subtle difference, and maybe some people just think, oh, it's just a little bit quieter. Can't you just up the volume? You can, but actually, when you normalize or you do a compression on it, it just changes the sound a bit and gives it a bit more oomph. But that's a technical thing. But anyway, that is what that track is. This track here is my whoosh. That is purely my whoosh at a reduced level. I've just singled it out then. In the track it goes, hello, I'm the Bald Explorer out on another exploration. And then I often use music, as people do, and so we have a bit of intro stuff here. And which way do we go?
South. That way.
South. After you, sir. and then I use a classic bit of music which is called Little Dogs. And
After you, sir.
now, I always tend to let the music start just before the vision. Just before the vision. And in fact, as you can see here, here's the vision. The actual picture starts here, which is a bit of sped up stuff. Because when it was sped up, it's mute, so you've got to have something underneath it, or you've just got silence, and it'll look awful. But what I tend to do is, we're indicating here that the store that we're going to go for this walk, and I'm asking where do we go, and he says it's this way.
And which way do we go?
South. That way.
South. After you, sir.
So I don't want to pause. So although I want the indication that we are starting to go, which is what we have here, just this little tiny bit here where we start to leave. I don't need all of this leaving business. I don't need to do that. That to me is too long. I just like to have, the hint that we're just going to go, because audiences will see that. They'll go, okay, they're on their way. They're on their way. That's enough for me. But I just like to preempt it with the music. So it just starts there's just a few beats, if you see what I mean. And then we're straight into, but that's my personal way of doing it. So we run through a bit of that, and the music goes on. Of course, I've fiddled and farted with this now, changed all this. But the other thing is, now of course, I can't probably go back to the beginning because I've done too many changes. I like to use, when I'm using music, I always edit to the beat of the music. I think it's very important because music is it's rhythmic, and we're used to having beats and feeling the beat. And the picture, I think, reflects the beat. So I've probably buggered this up, but let's just see. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Now normally that would be a cutting point for me. I probably haven't got that much footage, so normally I might put in another bit here. So I'll just run that again. Bum 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 bum. Okay. There's a bit in the music where obviously I ran it to. Ah, there we go. D, D. I know this music so well, that's the trouble. So that's where I would normally put this bit in. And you can feel that the music changed on the beat, and I wanted the vision and the feel to slightly change. And again, now to me that is a good cutting point because of the music. D, D, did. I would then cut that to whatever else I've got. What's this? I would want another bit of travelling really, or something, but I clearly I didn't shoot enough, and so I must have just let the music run. But I know myself, I would have cursed because I hadn't shot enough. And that's the other thing, is if you're doing in the filming, shoot loads. There's lots of, I just want to see if there's to illustrate.
Amazing. I'm looking presumably.
Here we go. This is typical me, typical what we were talking about earlier.
I mean the view.
Coming up.
Look at the views.
Look at the views, cut to the view.
Earth coming up.
Look at the views. I mean, the views and everything is just amazing. I'm looking, presumably that is west. East.
You see the way I know I'm going to do that because I'm saying it. Look at the views, cut. And that's a technique that I often do. I'll often point the things out before the person next to me does it because I'm registering in my head that I need to get those shots.
Amazing. I'm looking, presumably that is west. East.
Yes, that's
where we
were earlier on the week.
Towards Swanage.
Yeah.
And then this way must be heading, I don't know, there's the...
And again, turn round.
And then this way must be...
Give enough indication to the audience that you're looking where you're going to look. you know, the audience need to know, oh, I'm looking that way, and often I'm pointing. So again, you need a bit of time, and then it just feels natural. It feels natural to point.
And then this way must be heading, I don't know, there's the Isle of Purbeck behind us.
Portland over there, Weymouth over there.
Yes.
And of course, now Dave comes in and he starts giving us directions. So I've cut to this, which is a still image, but it could be video.
Behind us.
Portland over there.
And then Dave says, Portland over there. And I'm thinking, right, okay, I need to get that because I need to cut to it. But we don't see him pointing yet because I probably didn't have it.
Weymouth over there.
Yes.
I mean, literally, you know, north, south, east, west. A lot more boats out on the sea today.
A lot more boats. There's a boat.
Boats out on the sea today.
Which I happen to, you know, a lot more boats. I need to get shots of bloody boats.
Yeah, a Saturday at the
And you can see why they would have got the...
But it's a nice shot, you know, it's a lovely shot. There's a boat.
Chap up here, as you said, below.
Anyway...
There's some canoeists.
There's some canoeists.
But this is just amazing. There's some canoeists below us on that beach, and there's some pleasure boats down there. But Dave, we want to go down to the beach, don't we?
Well, there's this fantastic sandy beach, which is...
So anyway, that's just a kind of an introduction. We'll go into more detail on this on another occasion. Let's just make sure that people are still there. Right, it's I didn't realise it's just gone past. So we'll have a quick question and answer session and then we must end it. So if you've got any final questions, we'll just take a few questions. I know that people will probably be wanting to get off and do other things. Let's get back to that. Let me know if it's been useful, and that will be good. Let's have a look. Premiere Pro has a very useful filter called Broadcast that compresses and boosts the voice beautifully on one click, says Nigel Sadler. The music is not called Doobie-doo, Doobie-doo. No, funnily enough, it's not called. Dave Ford says, Richard's advice to me is to film as much footage as you then and cut it again. Yes, but let me stress on the film as much footage as you can. Know what it is you're know what it is you're filming. Be aware of the scene that do your master scene, as it were. So if you're doing what you do, Dave, you're walking along and you might pass a pub that has an interesting history, and you might tell us the interesting history. Do all of that first. And as you're telling us all of that, part of your brain is going, oh, I mentioned the chimney, or I mentioned this, or I mentioned that. We want to see those bits, so make sure you've got that. Then just a couple of other cutaways, which you might need just to get you out of trouble, because we always get into a bit of trouble. Or you may want to shorten that whole scene, and sometimes to shorten a scene you need to put something over it, like it might be a shot of Logan looking at you saying, come on, let's go. And then you can sort of shorten the scene a bit, because you may find that the middle of that whole scene about the pub was either the wrong pub or just boring, or you got all the dates wrong and you think, actually, I don't really need that. You could then have your top and tail that scene with the edit hidden by a shot of the dog. What do you think videos that start talking as soon as the video starts? I know Richard Suggett likes to have a moment before the video starts. It's almost like you're just getting ready. And I suppose in the old days that's what title sequences were. And people do use title sequences. And on YouTube, they're almost not necessary now. They're almost an acronym? What's the word I'm looking for? They're very old-fashioned, aren't they? People who use these long-winded title sequences. I think 10 seconds is enough because you want to get into it, because we don't have enough time, personally, which is why I tend to just use my logo, and I have a like 2 seconds at the beginning, and then I'm into it. Because I think if you've got to sit, if you do a lot of videos and people sit through the same old title sequence, it's like, yeah, come on. But everyone's got their own attitude about that. Oh, hang on a minute. Where are we? Are you still looking at me up there? Let me get rid of that. There we go. Get my miserable face now. Is there a reason why you use a hand mic rather than give your interviewee a radio mic? Yes, that's a good question. I use a hand mic. Hand mics are brilliant. I know they can look cumbersome on the screen. I haven't got one to hand. Funnily enough, I've got some scissors that will dummy as my hand mic. A number of reasons. One, radio mics are expensive. They take time to clip on and do. Often you probably have to go through, unless you've got a pro camera, you probably have to go through some mixer so that your radio mic and the interviewee's radio mic, the signals go in and you can mix them. They may speak much louder or quieter, whereby you need to tweak them and get the balances right so it records. So that becomes problematic and time consuming. And you've got to carry all this stuff, and it's got to go into a receiver which you've got on your belt. And I tend to act very fast, and I respect people's time, and I'm not paying them, and I don't need them to sort of turn up half an hour earlier so I can go through all this. I can't monitor the sound as well. So when I'm interviewing people, I don't want them to have to worry that there's a microphone on them. I don't want them to worry that the backpack is going to fall out, or that they walk off forgetting to give the radio mic back to you, or that the fluffy has slipped, or that it's blowing against them, which often happens, or it's slipped off the little clip. There's so many things. It's all right in a if you're doing an interview, somebody sat down and it's much more controlled. The thing about a handheld mic is whoever controls the mic controls the interview. So, okay, it looks a bit clunky, and the recorder clips on the bottom, like that. I've got a mic. You don't have to use scissors. Scissors are not as good. So I can judge the distance because I know the microphone. I know its audio pattern. This microphone, I know, picks up a certain amount of sound, but I know where the drop-off is, so I know how close it needs to be. That's one thing. If I point the microphone to the person, there is an unwritten rule. It's a subconscious thing that says, talk. Talk, you bastard. And so if I ask somebody a question, or I just say, look, what do you think? And I go like that very motion psychologically makes them go, oh, crikey, I've got to say something. And they will start talking. If they're boring me, or they're waffling on, or whatever, I can take that from them. I command the conversation. I can say, oh, well, that's very interesting. Even if they carry on talking, I know that by bringing it to me, they are now going to be very distant on the microphone. I'm going to be dominant, and I can actually step away from them, and I can walk away if necessary. You are in control when you're interviewing somebody with a handheld mic. I love it. I absolutely love it. It can be a pain if they move away and turn their backs and all those sort of things. And I do occasionally have to say, look, I'm sorry, I can't hear you because you keep moving away. Stand still. But they're brilliant things. They're brilliant things. They're very underrated. Slow down or speed up music to avoid copy issues, says Jada Jones. One of the best ways of learning how to edit is to go on a walk with Richard and see him planning the video on the fly and editing it in real time. Very much. That's exactly it. I'm editing the video the moment we start filming. Because I started in Super 8, and on a spool of Super 8 you had 3.5 minutes of film. You didn't waste a frame. Every frame you counted for. you couldn't just switch the camera on and just wait, you know, and move it there and move it there, because it was a nightmare. In the early days of video, you would see people just, in the early days of video, and they could, you know, VHS into the thing. Oh, we've got 3 hours. I can just keep shooting loads and loads. Yes, but you've got to sit through and find all the shots. I know that if I go out with Matthew or with Mark English or with Mr. Suggett or with the lovely Julia or whoever, I know, and they now know how I work. We'll say, right, we're going to do a piece to camera. We do a piece to camera. We need a walking shot. We'll walk from that tree to that tree. I'll set up the shot. We'll do the walk. That's it. I know that I probably want 3 walking shots before the next piece to camera. I'm already thinking, yeah, that'll probably be a bit of music. It gets a bit templated, formulated, if you like, but you're working on the fly, and sometimes you think, oh, wouldn't it be great if the camera was up here and we walked down that little passage there? And so sometimes you scrabble up and you get this one shot, which I may only use for a second or 2 seconds, and it may have taken 5 minutes to go and do it, and on screen it's only a second, but it adds something. Henry's Adventures says there are some people who have an introduction to the video, nothing wrong with that, but when they are more than 10 seconds I've lost interest. Exactly. Come to how much did the mics cost you? Well, all mics cost different mics cost a different amount of money. This particular mic is an AKG D230. It's about £300. Then the recorder itself is about 125 or 150 that goes in. Not that this is a camera, but the little. That's probably it. So 450 quid. This, I need to buy a new one of these mics. This one's getting, not that it's anything wrong with the mic, it just looks a bit battered. I've had this for years. Could spray it, I suppose, but it would be handy to have a spare one. I've got a Sennheiser and it's okay, but I love that microphone. I love it. And if I dropped it or lost it, I nearly lost it once in Binstead Woods and I had to walk back to get it. So I do need to buy a spare. How much? Slowing down, speed up music, prevent copyright is the best way. Copyright music is so cheap now. There's so much free music available, and when we first started, it was a nightmare. Where do you get it from? Now it's a lot easier. Graham Whittington says, "Great insight to your workflow, Richard. I like the idea of timing to the beat of music." Yeah, absolutely. But it's just a natural thing. I think we do it, and television does it all the time. Adverts do it all the time. Pop music, music videos do it all the time. I've enjoyed this. Why not pick up? Yes. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Do you want to see some more of this? And I do this now. This is my cap in hand bit. But if you would like to make a donation, I do this for a living. I used to do corporate work. I don't do it anymore. It's all dried up. They discovered I was doing YouTube videos and figured I was too busy. And I was too busy, but I still need to earn a living. So I only earn my money now. Occasionally I do talks about filming and stuff. And occasionally I'm a patron of reading at a school because I wrote some children's books some while ago. But I very rarely do that. YouTube barely pay anything from the videos I make, about £50 a month. I have patrons who support me from £1 a month to a lot more. If you would like to support me and help me out and save me having to go and get a proper job, I will continue to make the videos, and I will, come and help you and inspire you, or, answer questions and all the rest of it as best of my ability. I think personally, I would love to see more people out there making videos, particularly if they're doing them of heritage, landscape and nature, because I do fear that we're losing all our stuff and we need to get it on film. And if I can inspire you to edit them well, not brilliant, but just well, it's going to be fantastic archive for the future, and we'll be making these videos for future generations if we can get our act together. I may do another one next Tuesday. Maybe Tuesday nights is a good night for video editing night, and we'll see how we go. I promise the next one I won't go on quite so long. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Check out baldexplorer.com for ways to make a donation or become a patron. You can, of course, buy a mug with Bald Explorer on it, which would be great. And I will see you out and about on a video coming to the Bald Explorer channel. Thank you so much for watching. It's been great. And thanks. Sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions or all of your comments. It's been interesting, but thank you for watching. And I'll let you know for next Tuesday. I'll put a post up on Facebook, on the Bald Explorer Facebook page, but I'll also put one on the whatever the social thing is on YouTube. You get a community thing, and on Instagram. Bald Exploring is my Instagram thing. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I must go. I'm going to make another cup of tea, one that's hot. Take care. Thanks so much for watching. All the best, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.